For about the last decade, I've been doing research on the resurgence of biological concepts of race, and I've been challenging that idea because race is actually an invented category. We know that it was created in order to justify slavery and conquest, and has been a logic that has been an excuse to promote violence against disadvantaged people across the globe for centuries. The purpose of the symposium was to reveal how race really isn't as universal and stable and natural as people think it is, by showing the varieties of ways it's used in different societies, but also by showing some common themes about the dangers of thinking of race as a natural biological division of human beings. We had a great variety of speakers. Some who come to mind are Carolyn Roberts, who is a historian of science at Yale, and she presented about the development of medicine on British slave ships. She gave a really gripping paper that showed that modern medicine is rooted in the role that doctors played in containing enslaved Africans on ships as they were compelled to cross the Atlantic.
African people were already utterly dehumanized in the context of the slave trade. Cultural and social inferiority, coupled with their economic value, gave birth to a new form of medicine that normalized, naturalized, and institutionalized medical violence against them.
Ambrose Wonkum is a geneticist from University of Cape Town in South Africa. And he presented a very important paper showing that the Bantu tribe in Africa is so heterogeneous that you could not describe it as a race or a sub-race.
Last year, we performed a study trying to look for the frequency of sickle cell disease in Bantu South African. And the reason of doing that was that Bantu South African have been out of the malaria zone for at least 3,000 years. And unsurprisingly, we found that they don't have sickle cell mutation anymore. And I've said just before that we have the exact culture, exact language, same language, and so on, but no sickle cell mutation anymore.
He made the point that people from the Bantu tribe in Cameroon are more likely to have the sickle cell trait than people in that same tribe in South Africa, because the trait is an adaptation to prevent malaria. And so he made the point that being Bantu doesn't predict anything about sickle cell trait. And it was a great way of showing not only that Africa is the most genetically diverse place on the planet, and it doesn't make sense to say that African people are one biological race, but also how doctors might misdiagnose people if they assume that because of their race, they have a particular genetic trait. Isaac Warbrick was another fascinating speaker. He's an exercise physiologist and health researcher from the Maori tribe in New Zealand. He presented on how higher rates of obesity among the Maori are taken to be some sort of innate racial and stigmatized trait. And he also presented on how the Maori people themselves have found alternative ways based on their own traditional cultural practices to address obesity that don't rely on these stigmatized, racialized ideas about Maori health.
So we've been playing around in the gym with telling stories, telling our cultural stories within an exercise session. You know, people do it in dance all the time, on Broadway, they tell stories, so why can't I do it through exercise? And with the feedback that I get from these guys is, you know what, my whole life I've heard these stories as a kid, or I've read them in books, but I never thought that they had relevance for me today. And I think that's an important point, is that our culture, our cultural narratives, our histories have relevance to us now. The knowledge which shaped us and enabled us to survive has relevance to our health and our well-being now.
Challenging the biological concept of race is extremely important because it provides a logic for violence and unequal outcomes for people all across the world. In the United States, doctors undertreat Black people for pain based on stereotypes about the biological differences in Black people's bodies. Police racially profile disadvantaged racial groups all over the globe. So it's important that instead of continuing to think about human beings as separated biologically by race, we affirm each other's common humanity by ending the social inequalities that are caused globally by the political system of race.